Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of the ends it's sent, it is the right of the people to alter it, or to abolish it, and to institute a new government. Laying its foundation on such principles, organizing powers in such forms to affect their safety and their happiness against the coming of the storm. Safety, happiness, that's the goal. When a government loses its heart and soul, we can change the locks, we can change the name, because the power is ours to reclaim. Prudence indeed will dictate the way that long established ones should stay. But when a long train of abuses is found, you've got to put that system in the ground. It's our right, it is our duty to throw it off and start anew.
Once again, with apologies for a jumbled clock on a Tuesday morning. Glad you're along with us for Bill Mick Live. They loaded the Michael Del Giorno clocks instead of my show's clocks, so our breaks are different than you're used to hearing them here. We'll have a couple of extended breaks here in this first segment. Then we're pretty much normal the rest of the day. Dave, I just had a terrifying thought. Maybe they forgot to tell me they fired me.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, well, and then, they're usually pretty good about telling people that, though. I feel some comfort at that. I'm just not sure.
You still have email access.
Yeah, if that was gone, so would I be. Headline at BillMick.com this morning, catching up. There are links there to Dave Bowman and Dave Does History, a couple of them there on the page, so you can link up and see all the stuff Dave does, which is darn amazing, and doing a great job with it. But we do Dave Does History in our 8 o'clock hour on Tuesday mornings, and we've been in this Liberty 250 series for well over a year now as we march to the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country, and we're going to do a special Florida Roundtable for that July 4th edition of the Roundtable as well. So looking forward to that happening when we get there about 2 months from now. So not too bad. Dave, what are we doing this morning, sir?
By the early to mid part of May, 1776, there was a lot of stress in the country, a lot of confusion in the country. John Adams, of course, is in Congress in Philadelphia, and he is receiving communications from his constituents back in Massachusetts who are angry because Congress has not done nothing yet. And, of course, on this Friday morning, they are busily taking up things like this. Congress then resumed the consideration of the report from the Committee of the Whole, which, being read, was agreed to by Congress. That's the kind of stuff they were doing. That the commanding officers in the different departments and posts shall make monthly returns to the Commander-in-Chief, George Washington, of the number and state of the troops, the military stores in their respective departments. Congress has taken up this list of things that they're going to take care of on this particular Friday morning, and you can still find this report. It's about 2 pages long in modern print. And at the end of it, it says, very simply, that it be recommended to the respective assemblies and conventions of the United Colonies that where no government sufficient to the exigencies of their affairs have hitherto been established, to adopt such government as shall, in the opinion of those representatives, best conducive to the happiness and safety of their constituents. That's it.
Happiness and safety. And we pick it up in 4.5 minutes here on Bill Mick Live. So, Dave, happiness and safety, the key they're looking for here. And they weren't getting that from the British government that they were a part of.
Well, they certainly didn't seem to think so. And, of course, part of the problem is by this point the king has essentially back in October declared war on us. So we're outside of his protection now, which is one of the promises of the Magna Carta, which feeds into all of this thing. Adams, of course, is a prolific writer. And one of the things he has written in this few days here, it has been the will of heaven, he writes, that we should be thrown into existence at a period when the greatest philosophers and lawgivers of all antiquity would have wished to live. A period when a coincidence of circumstances without example has afforded to the 13 colonies at once an opportunity of beginning government anew from the foundation and the beginning as they choose. And of course, this Friday, May 10th meeting of Congress where that resolution was sort of thrown in there, at least that's the way it reads when you read the report. There's this, they're going to send $400,000 to Washington. They're going to build a road to Canada. They're going to buy some Indian supplies. All this stuff is in there. And in the middle of all this resolved that if you don't have a working government in your colony, you should make one. And it's almost like an afterthought. And yet, in Adams's own belief, this is the point. This is the actual declaration of independence. Because what we're saying here is all the royal government is gone. All the royal governors can be ignored. Right now, colonies, go out and form your own governments, take over things, and start running things because the king has declared war on us, and therefore we no longer owe him allegiance. That's not quite the end of it because John Dickinson's really upset about this. They're going to argue, and eventually it's going to be the case.
And we pick it up when we continue.
Before there were headlines, there were hard choices. Toilet paper, should it be made out of trees or bamboo? Trees, thank goodness. You're listening to Dave Does History on Bill Mick Live.
Glad to have Dave along on the Tuesday. Nice to have you with us as well on 92.7 FM WMMB. By the way, follow us on Instagram at WMMB Radio. Dave, we're seeking safety and happiness, and we seem to believe we are entitled to that. Where are we going now?
So by this week in 1776, you have this tension in Congress. John Dickinson of Delaware, Pennsylvania, actually is he's not convinced that independence is the way to go. Adams is not only convinced that it's the way to go, but he's adamant about it, and of course so are his constituents. His correspondence is full of letters from Massachusetts telling him, why haven't you done this yet? Why haven't you done this yet? And in the middle of all this work on that Friday, May 10th, he manages to slip that resolution in there, which, by the way, is approved by a narrow vote. Dickinson is adamant against this. He's just furious about this whole thing. And the debates are going to continue for the next 3 days. It's going to be hard debates because this is that moment, folks, where we have all of these grievances, we have all of these ideas, we have all of these thoughts. What we don't have is a functioning government. The king has put us outside of his protection, and those are the words that King George III used, outside of my protection. And by any means necessary, I give my concurrence to stop this rebellion. Those are George III's words. These words are in direct violation, and this is something we don't really understand. They are in direct violation of Article 39 of the Magna Carta. This is a king who has basically already said, you guys are an enemy country. But he can't treat us as an enemy country because then if he does, then he legitimizes. This is very similar to what Lincoln has to go through in 1861. Are they prisoners of war or are they political prisoners? Those sort of things enter all this. Adams and Dickinson's argument is fueled by the the public opinion, which is, of course, being driven by common sense. And we've talked about common sense quite a bit. Most of the public of the United States is reading common sense, and they are on board with this idea. The problem that they have in Congress is that John Adams, I know this will surprise you, does not like Thomas Paine and doesn't think that Common Sense, the pamphlet, is worthwhile. And the reason he doesn't think it's worthwhile is because while it does an excellent job of tearing down the king and his parliament and his government, it does nothing to establish what takes place after it. This is why so many revolutions throughout history fail, friends, because nobody's thinking forward. It's easy to declare rights. It's easy to be angry. It's easy to tear down a government. What do you replace it with when you've done that? And this is the thought, this is the thinking, this is the purpose of what Adams is doing on May 10th. It's what he's writing about in his thoughts on government. It's not enough to just declare independence. If we don't have a structure in place, if we don't have a framework, a building, an idea of how we're going to govern ourselves to guarantee our safety and happiness, what are we doing?
And we pick it up in 1 minute right here on Bill Mick Live. Dave, if you've ever packed up a house and moved it, and I know you have, you find it's a lot more difficult to organize everything and put it in the truck than it is to take it out. Much easier to tear something down than to build it up, and that's what they're facing here.
Not only are they facing that, but there's this public pressure to move. There's Dickinson's arguments against this. And these 3 days, Friday is the 10th, so 11, 12, you get to Monday. These 3 days of debate are intense, and they are argumentative, and they are angry. They are filled with frustration. But at the end of this, on May 15th, John Dickinson is sick. He's exhausted, and he does not show up to Congress on May 15th. That's important, because on May 15th, Congress puts this resolution, this preamble, onto that resolution. Now listen very carefully. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. Resolved unanimously, Dickinson's not there, that the delegates appointed to represent the colonies in General Congress be instructed to propose to the respectable body, Congress, to declare the United Colonies free and independent states, absolved from all allegiance to or dependence on the Crown or Parliament of Great Britain, and that they give assent to the colonies to such declaration and to whatever measures may be thought proper and necessary by the Congress for forming foreign alliances, the Confederation of the Colonies, at such time and manner as to them shall be best, provided that the power of forming government for and the regulations of the internal concerns of each colony shall be left to the respective colonial legislatures. Do you understand what Congress is saying on May 15th, 1776? We're done. We are independent. In fact, Adams will write, this is the Declaration of Independence. Everything that happens after this is just icing on the cake that's already been made. This May 15th preamble essentially declares royal authority in the colonies null and void. It ends our allegiance to the Crown, which has been pulling a lot of things that we don't like. And what it actually means is all the royal governors, if you haven't already left, get out. Because we are replacing you now with a government best suited to affect our safety and happiness. Governors can be ignored now. Congress has authorized the states to do that. Each state is going to reassemble its legislature. Most of the states are going to immediately redraft new constitutions. There's one big exception to that. No big surprise. It's Rhode Island. It doesn't. But the rest of the states start rewriting their constitutions. They start forming governments best able to affect the safety and happiness of their individuals. And, of course, the biggest thing that it does is that it changes the allegiance of the militias, the state militias in South Carolina, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, wherever these militias are. Up till this point, when you join a militia, you take an oath to the Crown of England. That now changes, and all of these militias now take their oaths to their local authority, essentially telling the Royal Command, kiss off, we're not part of you anymore. In all practical purposes, long before, well, not long before, 2 months before it's going to be in print, this is actually the Declaration of Independence, May 15th, 1776, a date which we don't even notice when it goes by because it seems like such a mundane thing that Congress has done that day. They were handling all this other stuff. They slipped this in. They put in the preamble when Dickinson wasn't there to argue about it, and off we go. We have essentially declared independence. But we've added to that this idea that the colonies themselves, now states, are going to build these governments. We throw those words out there. In fact, that's what Jefferson will write in the Declaration of Independence, to affect our safety and happiness. It's our duty, it's our privilege, it's our ability to throw off government that isn't working for us and replace it with something that affects our safety and happiness. What does that mean? Well, Adams, of course, is most concerned with this reconstruction of government because that government can't claim that the king is a tyrant and at the same time run your courts and your militias in his name, can you? Now the court's gone. We're going to start rebuilding these governments, and we're going to make sure that the American people are safe and happy.
How do we rebuild it? Becomes the focus. We get back to Dave Does History in moments here on Bill Mick Live. We'll also let you in on the conversation, 321-768-1240, when we continue on a Tuesday on WMMB.
Empires rise, empires fall, and somebody always writes it down. Good thing you're here. Dave Does History on Bill Mick Live.
Thank you, Victor Lyle. And Florida Roundtable this weekend, speaking of legislatures and the like, we're going to revisit our show with Chris Muro regarding the full-time Florida legislature. Is it a good idea or not? We're in the midst of multiple special sessions after the regular session was over with. It's almost as if they might as well be full-time because they're spending all that time up there. We talk it this weekend on the Roundtable and podcast for that and our show. And Dave Does History, of course, top of the page at BillMick.com. You can catch up with Dave on the show page today at BillMick.com. So, Dave, we're severing ties. How difficult is it going to be to build something here? Especially, you can't get 3 people to agree to something, much less representatives of 13 colonies.
And yet, as Adams wrote, what a privilege to be alive in such a time as this, that all the ancients would have loved to live right now, because all of their arguments, all of their debates, all of their ideas are coalescing into this singular moment in all of history. I don't know that you can find another time, another moment, another place where all of that comes to fruition in that singular moment. You have all of the Greek ideas, all of the Roman ideas, all of the philosophical ideas of the Enlightenment. All of this stuff, all of a sudden, is right here. Sometimes I wonder about King George. King George was not an uneducated man. His personality would not, his ego would not allow him to see that. But at the same time, as Adams wrote, it's an amazing moment, a confluence in time. But the immediate problem you have is these 13 colonies, now states, that are going to experiment with self-rule. Some of these structures are going to be very precise and very familiar to us. Some of them are going to be very stable. Some of them, Rhode Island, are going to be very chaotic and very whatever. Rhode Island is going to keep their 1644 royal charter as their constitution, which is going to cause some major problems later on by the 1840s, it's going to cause another revolution in Rhode Island. We're going to have an armed revolt in Rhode Island over this, which is going to lead to an interesting court case, which we didn't have time to get into it today, but is actually kind of influencing some of my thoughts on redistricting today because of what Rhode Island does in 1776. You're going to have all these different structures, different balances of power. Massachusetts is going to end up with their powerful privy council with a governor that serves for a year at a time. Some of it's going to work, some of it isn't going to work. The tension becomes what we're fighting for, liberty, versus order. That idea expressed by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Boy, that phrase, safety and happiness. When we hear that today, what do we hear? What is safety today? Is safety crime reduction? Is safety, I don't know, filling potholes on roads?
Border control.
Border control. What does safety mean? What is happiness? In the world we live in today, happiness is a dopamine rush because someone liked my post on Twitter. What does it mean to them? And this is part of what I've been trying to drive at for a year, folks. Words have meaning. And words written in 1776 don't necessarily correlate to the meanings that we have to them today, not because the meaning of the word has actually changed, but because our application of it has changed. The idea of safety is this idea that you are restrained by law. Safety literally means the assurance of rule of law. That's not little L libertarianism in today's world, is it? No. Everybody do your own thing. That's not what we're talking about here when we talk about liberty. We're talking about the assurance of a rule by law and structure. And happiness then becomes this idea that we have, and we've talked about this in the past with the pursuit of happiness, this idea of I perceive and I act, therefore I am, Samuel Johnson. And this idea that we have an opportunity to participate in changing things, in building something, that structure which provides that safety. Happiness is a fulfillment of actual accomplishment, not simply self-aggrandizement, which is what it's become today. Look at me, look at me, look at me is our mindset today. That's what makes us happy today, is stuff or popularity or whatever. That's not what they meant by happiness. What they meant was virtue and participation in building that structure which provided that assurance of a rule of law. And yet, if you look at our society today, you'd have to argue that many people perceive happiness as tearing down those structures. How did we get to that point? Without discipline, without this idea that we are virtuous, participatory citizens, liberty ends up collapsing into disorder. When I think it was the Apostle Paul that wrote, all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. Didn't he write that? Mm-hmm. This is what he's talking about. This idea that just because I can do something, why should I do it? In some ways, this idea of just allowing everything to happen because, well, that's freedom. Liberty then collapses.
My dad famously said to me repeatedly through my life, son, freedom is the ability to do what you ought to do.
Exactly. And liberty the same way. And without that virtue and participation, it simply collapses into disorder. We talked in the the first hour about these people online saying things that they would never say to you in person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did we get to the point where they're able, not just able to do that, they were always able to do that, but willing to do that? And that's that change from that discipline, that idea of happiness. Happiness no longer means virtuous participation. Now it means pay attention to me because I'm important.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's no different than these people who post on TikTok or Reels or whatever, explaining to me that I'm the bad guy because they're defending whatever by telling me how I have to address them. If you know what I'm talking about. It's the same idea. We're still arguing over that same balance that John Adams was arguing about back in May of 1776. How do we build these structures? And for all the brilliance of Tom Paine's common sense, for all of the brilliance of his arguments that the crown is a royal ass and that we've got to get rid of this and we need to be independent, you can't just tear things down without replacing it with a functioning government, abolished or altered, laying out principles on the foundation of those things which will most affect the most of our citizens' happiness and safety. And yet somehow or another we've turned that into, what about me? We're still arguing over that same balance. We're still confusing happiness with comfort. We're still underestimating how fragile ordered liberty actually is.
Mm-hmm.
The Declaration tells us why we broke away. This resolve of May 10 and May 15th shows us how we did it. But at the end of the day, it's that line. We have the right to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, organizing its power in such form as to ensure our happiness and safety. In 10 years' time, Sam Adams is going to say, I'm not going to the Constitutional Convention because I smell a rat, he said. And yet here in our own Declaration of Independence, yeah, we said it to the king, but we're capable of saying it to ourselves. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, and the Articles of Confederation had become that, we have the right to alter and abolish it. And that, my friends, has never ended. We still have that right today. We still have that privilege today to alter and abolish if we need to, and to assure our safety and happiness.
Would we have the resolve to do it if it came to that?
Not as long as our safety and happiness understanding of those two words is what it has become modern.
Right.
Look at me. Look at me.
Yep.
That's not
quick
order.
Call in 321-768-1240. Line 1, you're up on Bill Mick Live. Good morning.
Hey, this is John in Melbourne.
Hi, John.
This has me hearkening back to that hallowed professor, philosopher, boxer, Mike Tyson. And I paraphrase this. He says, the internet has emboldened people to say what they want and not get punched in the face.
And he's right. And as Dave said earlier today, John, this guy, the shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, needed to be punched in the face before it came to that.
Yeah, I think I quoted him.
Yeah, that's very true. You have, John's gone. Dave, you've got a note about without liberty, what happens to safety. And that's what the colonials were experiencing, that they weren't being protected, they were being controlled.
If you define safety as they did, which is this ordered idea, this guarantee of rule of law, that's what the king had taken away in an ex post facto manner. You want to know why ex post facto is in our Constitution? Because of what King George III did after he declared us in October in rebellion and out of his protection, which is a total violation of the Magna Carta. And we just blow by that because we don't know any of this history. We don't know what any of this stuff is in there. If you define safety, and they did, as this idea of guarantee of rule of law, look at our world today. Rule of law. We've got judges apologizing to people who tried to kill the president. Is that the rule of law? The way that they would have expected it to be handled? And
Can't even begin to imagine it would be.
And can you imagine where we would be? Where are we going to be if it continues to go in this kind of direction where the rule of law has basically it's been pushed aside and it's been replaced with the rule of the majority, which is a democracy, which is exactly what they didn't want.
Exactly.
Don't want that. Because once you have that, that's why I get upset with politicians who scream about democracy. You don't even know what it is. You don't understand these ideas. You don't understand these concepts. You don't understand this history of how we got to this point. And we obviously missed, because they don't teach this in the history classes, that we actually declared our independence on May 15th, not July 4th. By the time we get to July 4th, we're just putting it, it's really just the press release to announce it. It's really all it is, because really by May 15th, we've said we're independent. The king he's declared war on us. So let's form some governments. States start forming those governments. Virginia really kicks into gear with this. Virginia is one of the first states. They're not the first to actually authorize we talked about North Carolina being the first. Delaware jumps in there. Rhode Island jumps in there. But it's Virginia that really takes the lead on this and starts forming a new constitution, a new government. And they kind of take the lead on that, which is probably why so many Virginians become active later on in the leadership of the country, because they have experience with this and they've made it work, whereas some of these states, Rhode Island, have not, and to a lesser degree New York. But the bottom line is we affect this safety and happiness. And I think if we start thinking in those terms, when we start looking at how did we get to where we are, I submit to you that it's because we don't understand what safety and happiness means. We also maybe don't understand that we still have the right to alter or abolish the form of government that we have to make it better, which is the whole promise of not just the Declaration of Independence, but the Constitution, which says in order to form a more perfect union, we can amend this, we can change this, we can do these things, but it's going to require us to stop confusing happiness with comfort and safety with chaos.
Dave, do you have one or three changes you would make to make it a more perfect union today?
Wow. We don't have time to go through all of that. Yeah, there's some things I would change, but most of it comes down to getting the people to be virtuous. It's not so much the structure of the government, it's the involvement of the people. We're the ones who have failed to live up to these promises. Mm-hmm. We're the ones who don't understand. Remember, that was the people, common sense, that drove Congress to do this. Nowadays, we say we want Congress to do something, Congress doesn't do it, and what do we say? And we go on our way.
Do you ever feel like our generations that are in place right now, from the greatest generation to whatever the newest generation's being called today, that changes, Generation A or something, are we presiding over the demise of the work that these founders did?
Well, I think arguably that started in 1791. But yeah, I'm worried because we don't understand these things, and because we don't understand these things, we have no idea why they are the way they are. You can't tear down something. This is what Adams was saying. If you don't have something to replace it that's based on safety and happiness, and yet revolutions fail because they don't have that. And these people today want a revolution. They want to tear down what we have and replace it with what? They have
a term they don't understand. Communism or socialism. And they don't understand that either. Dave Bowman, it's been a good day. Thanks for being here on a Tuesday. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we'll pick it all up then.
See you then.
Alter. Abolish. Institute. New foundation. Laying its foundation on such principles, organizing powers in such forms to affect their safety and their happiness. that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new governments, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.